We got Brandie Phillips. Brandie, thank you for coming in today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You have a remarkable story. Most people couldn't live a tenth of what you've been through, but you went through the most traumatic experience anyone could ever go through. Tell us what happened on that crazy day.
It was a normal day. 2 days before we had celebrated my parents' 25th wedding anniversary, and we threw this big surprise party. And, it was a normal day. And my mom had to go seek treatment because she was dying from breast cancer. And they were seeing family off at the airport. So they had, my brother and him had actually went to a party the night before, and they got drunk and they fell asleep in the car, but they left the keys in the ignition. So the cops had come by, and it's a small town, everybody knows everybody up there. So they impounded my parents' car and took my brother and Mike to the local library to let them sleep it off. So my parents had to take Mike's truck the next day to go get treatment and drop people off at the airport and that kind of stuff. So that left him and I with no vehicle at the house, except for the race truck. And my dad had been working on that, so he was cutting a hole in the floorboard to switch it from automatic to manual, and it was in the garage kind of just in pieces. But we all knew that you could start it with a screwdriver. Those trucks back then, you didn't even need a key. You could just start it with a screwdriver. And so we just decided we were going to make a quick trip up to his house. We were going to get some stuff, change of clothes. We were going to get something to eat, and we were going to go catch a movie together. When we left the house, we stopped off at a small little restaurant. We saw a friend of ours. I remember seeing her. It was Jenny. And then we got back in the truck and we were leaving. So Red Bluff is really small. It's like two main streets, like literally one goes one way and one goes the other. And the main street turns into Highway 99, which is the back way to Chico. And he lived off of that. So we were on our way down Main Street, and at the same time that we were traveling, there was two guys that were on the attempt to run. They had stolen a vehicle and attempted to rape two girls, and they had set a roadblock up on I-5, and they had gotten past it. Well, they happened to be right next to us at a stoplight, and they were drunk, high, stoned, you name it. And I remember them yelling at us saying, let's race, blah, 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 because it's a race truck. It's loud, you can tell. And we took off, and when we took off, the guys had rammed the side of the door, my door, which I didn't have my seatbelt on. And at that point, it had threw me onto the floorboard. Well, it was 2 lanes, center divider, 2 lanes, and we went into the center divider. And by the time we regained control, their car had spun out, and so they were in a spinning slide. They clipped the rear end of our truck, which put us in a sideways slide. At that point, up ahead was a gas station where there was like a big lot, 2 big lots where you could sleep or pull off, and then get gas, whatever. Well, the diesel truck had a Caterpillar attached to the back of it, and he was going across our 2 lanes, center divider, to go the opposite direction. Well, when he saw us coming, he bailed from the diesel truck and left it there, and we slammed right into it, and they slammed into the back.
Witnesses at the scene said it was an explosion out of a movie.
It was a double explosion. People could see the fireball from miles and miles across town. It was said to be the biggest accident that had ever happened up there in Tehama County.
The sad story is your boyfriend at the time lost his life in that collision.
He was killed, yes. They actually pronounced us both dead at the scene. But there was 2 guys that were part of the construction company that happened to be volunteer firefighters, and they ran through to save his body and found me by chance still alive.
And the miracle aspect of it all was that you didn't have one broken bone.
Not one.
However, 30% of your body was burned in that.
And only 33% of my body was burned.
Wow.
They couldn't figure out how that was even possible. When I went to look at the truck for the investigation, the woman at the counter even looked at me and said, no, the people in that accident died. And my mom had to argue with her.
Do you remember the impact at all, or was it just like you woke up and you were...
I remember bits and pieces. I don't remember the direct impact because I was on the floorboard, so I didn't see anything. But I do remember when they hit the side of my door. They rammed the side of my door. And then from that point, I don't remember anything other than going through the doors of the ambulance. That was it. And then I woke up in the hospital, and I remember that. But other than that, I don't remember any of the in between. I was told that when they saved me by the man that actually pulled me out, he told me that when he pulled me out, the ambulance wasn't there yet, and they had the fire truck and the red board. They had laid me down on the red board, and as they had strapped me down, I actually broke the straps on the red board. My adrenaline was pumping so much. I got up and ran back through the fire to get to him. He ended up running in again after me and pulling me, and then by that point, the ambulance was there. I met him a couple of years ago for the very first time, and it's hard for me because even though I'm so thankful that I met him, he told me that to this day, one of the hardest parts of that day was for him was by the time it was all done and over with, he was left with my bloody handprints on his shirt. He said it was like my perfect handprints holding him, on his shirt. And he said that's something that he still lives with today.
My God, what a traumatic moment in time. And you had to get the news that your boyfriend was dead.
They wouldn't tell me for over a month. I was pretty much in an induced coma, in and out. They would wake me up, but I wasn't allowed to know anything because every time I would wake up, I would ask about him, and my heart rate would go off the charts. And so they kept me very heavily sedated for the first month. Yeah.
And during that time in the hospital, you're being treated for severe burns, and a lot of those are on your arm and back. And
yeah, I had skin graft surgeries. I spent 3 months in a glass room. I couldn't have flowers. I couldn't have visitors, really. I couldn't have anything.
During that process, you were mourning the death of your boyfriend. You're going through hell, through the skin graft treatment.
My mom was dying of breast cancer at the same time.
Your mother's dying of I mean, my God, it just does, it all hits you at once.
Honestly, I was on a lot of morphine. I had a button that was strapped to my hand. But I think at the age of 14, you don't know how to process any of that, like you're so used to just being a kid, and going to the lake, and what was your biggest worry? I didn't finish my homework, and now here I have to try and understand all these adult things that are happening to me, and death. I never really experienced death and any of that. So it was hard. I mean, they did, like I said, they did keep me pretty heavy sedated for the most part that I was through that. But I did have to go through rehabilitation. And when I went through rehabilitation is when I finally started learning. They put me through counseling before they would release me. So I think I finally started understanding like that this is my life now. This is my reality. I need to understand what's happening and what I'm about to go home to,
And you mentioned as you started to go through post-care therapy and healing and going through everything and kind of digesting and marinating over the whole situation, you started to get this survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that and how you worked through that?
Survivor's guilt it's something you can't control. Like, I've tried to navigate it. And I think the only way that I feel like I can navigate it is if I stay busy enough, in things that help me with my trauma and my therapy. But survivor's guilt, I could be anywhere at a birthday party, or I could be on a trip or a vacation, and something will trigger it. And I immediately go into this guilt of like, I shouldn't be having this much fun. Like, I shouldn't, like, especially for the fact that I was at his feet, like we were right next to each other in the vehicle. And how did I not have a single broken bone? And he was mangled to pieces, and I should have been the same, and I can't, to this day, I can't understand, how that happened that way, being so close to him. So that's something I really have a hard time with in life. It's probably my biggest trauma that I have is survivor's guilt. So anytime that, I'm starting to feel happy or something good is going in my life, I think to myself, like I shouldn't be here. Like he should be here enjoying this. We should be doing this together. It's just a guilt that you can't, it's hard to explain. You
It's
feel
hard to
guilty.
shake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your father also dealt with so much guilt and distraught, and you mentioned that he didn't want to live anymore.
No, he didn't. My mom, she had to write her letter on her deathbed. And she put in there, she had asked for me to do her makeup and my girlfriend to do her hair. And she listed her outfit and, all the things that she wanted before she passed. And the very last thing that was on her list was she wanted my dad and her best friend to be together. And my dad knew of the letter, my brother and I didn't. And so 2 days after, actually during the funeral, my mom is buried one headstone away from Mike. An old woman gave up her plot for my mom so that they could be close to each other. Mike's sister, Tori, had said to me at the funeral, she said, if you share your brother, I'll share my mother. And that was the first time I had broke down. And I remember looking over and I saw my dad, I had never seen my dad's face cringe up that tremendously, just seeing, he hadn't cried yet either. And that caught him just as much. And so 2 days after the funeral, I was still seeking treatment. And so I had gotten home and I found my dad just wasted off of gin and tonic and he had a gun in his mouth. And I spent a good hour talking that gun out of his mouth and he wouldn't budge. He just didn't want to live anymore. And I couldn't understand why. I broke down, I was why do you want to leave me? Why are you doing this? And so we both cried and he stopped and he put the gun down and I called 911 and they came and they took him away on a 5150. And then when he came home, he packed his bags and he said, I'm going to go see your grandma. And he disappeared for 2 months. No phone call, no nothing. And I finally called my grandma and she's like, no, he's never been here. So I called everybody. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So then I called my mom's best friend and my dad answered the phone. I hung up the phone immediately. And 8 hours later, he showed up at the house. And I was livid. I was mad. What are you doing? Why are you with her? Because we didn't know about the letter. And my dad sat down and he pushed the letter in front of me and my brother. And he asked us to read the letter. And then he left again.
I don't think anyone's ever heard of a story where a mother on her deathbed wants her husband to be with. It's almost like the most unselfish gesture you could make. But you were upset. It's like, Dad, how could you be with another woman when Mom just died? But when you saw the letter, could you wrap your head around it?
I could at that point because it was my mom's wishes, but I was just so angry at him because I was like, how could you leave us? How could you put me through that? Why didn't you show me the letter? Why couldn't you just show this to us? Why did you have to put us through so much more trauma and then abandon us after I just lost the person I love? My mom passed away. My brother is nowhere to be found. And I'm living in this house all alone at the age of 14. And my dad has disappeared and I'm still seeking treatment and you just left me.
Yeah.
I was angry. I was really angry.
Rightfully so. What happened to your brother? Did he freak out?
He lost his best friend. He lost his mom and his dad left. I mean, he went on, he was 16, 17 years old. He went on he was just out partying, just wasn't around. I mean, he moved drug dealers into the house. Our house got raided by drug reinforcement. I mean, it was just series of events after events after events, and then finally The town stepped in and they said to me, they're like, either you're going to go live in foster care or you're going to go live with your dad in LA. Like, everyone tried to take care of us, but we weren't their responsibility. Even though they tried, I mean, everyone tried to take care of us.
So you're going through all this post-recovery, mental, physical, by yourself. Your house turns into a trap house. Do you eventually get the hell out of there?
Yeah, I did.
And where'd you go?
I moved to LA with my dad.
Okay. So you come back to LA and your dad is now living with
My mom's best friend.
your mom's best friend.
Yes.
And did you have a hard time looking her in the eye?
I did. She went from being my brother's godmother to now being my dad's girlfriend. And she's known me since I was born. It's my mom's best friend. I only stayed a few months and I ended up back in Northern California. But she tried to tell me what to do one day, and
You snapped. Yeah.
physically snapped. I was the most rebellious kid. I mean, I went to El Camino High School. My principal hated me. She had me at every class. I had to have the teacher sign in. We were in the hallway one day, and she was mad because I was ditching, and she's like, you need to get in my office. And I told her to F off. And she's like, get in my office now. And so she calls my dad on the phone. And she's like, you know what your daughter said to me? And my dad's like, no, tell me what. He goes, she told me to F off. And he goes, and? He goes, what do you want me to do about it? He goes, she can't be controlled.
You were just untamable.
I was untamable. I was a very angry, angry person.
So what did you end up doing? Just living on the streets, or?
No, I met my daughter's dad. I did end up getting pregnant when I was 17. I did do some night school at El Camino. I kind of eased up on things and I went back to night school. I think should have graduated. I was like 11 credits short of graduating, but I have my daughter. So I was living with my daughter's dad.
And your daughter is now, what, 28 years old?
28,
okay.
yeah.
So you had her as a teenage pregnancy, and you mentioned her dad became a skinhead, basically.
Yeah.
Right. And when you met him, he was just kind of a normal dude?
He had a history of his own, stuff. But when we were together, I mean, we had a great relationship and everything was fine. And we'd do things together. Like, any normal couple, you argue and fight, but nothing traumatic at all.
But he came home one day with tattoos. What did they say?
He came home one day with white power tattooed on the back of his arms and a completely different person.
Shaved head, the whole thing.
The whole 9 yards. It took a massive series of events for me to get away from this man. Some very scary ones at that.
You mentioned he kidnapped your daughter.
He kidnapped my daughter, yes.
Was he physically abusive towards you?
To me, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. He shot at me in our house. I was crouched in the corner of the front door. I think I was 4 months pregnant. He shot at me several times playing Russian roulette with my life because he was angry about something. We were on our way home from dinner one night and he was angry about something. He threw me out of the truck at 45 miles an hour, 6 months pregnant. Used to bring girls home and make me watch things that I shouldn't have right in front of me when I was pregnant. And then we had my daughter and he was okay for a while after that. Like, we had gone to Northern California where his mom was at, so he was away from all of this down, here, and he was good until we came back. He started being abusive. Then I got away from him. He kidnapped her all the way up to Kern County. Neither one of us had legal custody because we weren't married. So I had to get what was called an ex parte motion, which the judge granted me full custody. It was like $5,000, and his family got involved. His dad helped me with that. They found out where he was at. We had to run in. So basically at the police station, they sat me and his dad down and they said, this is what we're gonna do. You're gonna follow us over there. We're gonna bum rush him and his friend, and you're just gonna grab the baby and go back to the police station. I'm 18, I'm terrified. And so I follow them there, and when I get there, I waited for the cop to yell at me. And so when he yelled, I came around the corner at the cabin and they had them, at gunpoint, and he was against the wall. And I froze. I stopped and I froze. And he's staring at me, with just these murder-looking eyes. He's like, I'm going to get you. He goes, I'm going to kill you. He's like, I'm going to get you for this, you know, like just coming at me in every direction. And the cop yells at me and says, go. And so I did. And when I grabbed my daughter, I just put her on my lap and I went all the way back to the police station where his dad was waiting. And he went to jail. How terrible our system is here is that even after that, he served like 9 or 10 months in prison. He got out. The judge still gave him supervised visitation rights after that.
That's
But it was,
crazy.
if he missed 3 visits or showed up high, stone, whatever, all rights were terminated till she was 18. But he ended up showing up twice and then never showing up ever again. But he even went to the point of like during all of that time when he was on those supervised visitation, he would hide in the dually that I bought for him in the cul-de-sacs. He would ram my car. He would try and run me into, he literally spent 2 years trying to kill me.
That's crazy. In front of the cops, he says, I'm going to kill you. You're done. And they still gave him visitation rights. I hope those laws have changed. That's crazy.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So you were able to get a lifetime restraining order against him, which is very hard to do. Where is he now?
I learned that he passed away, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago in a bike accident at Balboa Park.
So, Brandie, you meet a new dude. This guy's kind of a squared away guy. He's not a gangster. He's in the film industry. You have a child, a son with this man, right?
Yes.
And it seems like your life is improving on the surface, right?
Yes. I mean, as far as like a normal life, yeah, it was a normal life, yes. But inside, no.
Inside, you're still going through it, turmoil.
I'm screaming
Yeah.
inside, just not knowing who I was or if I really belonged there. And I just struggled with who I was, yeah.
For the most part, was a good dude in the beginning, right?
Yeah, he was a good dude.
You guys got married.
We got married.
You had a baby. He took your daughter on as his own,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you're almost living now a soccer mom lifestyle, right?
I was taking, I was mom to 2 kids. My kids were in soccer. They did sports. My daughter did cheer. My son raced BMX. I mean, I was doing all those things because I love it. I grew up with sports. So that part was the easy part. The part that I couldn't handle was not being able to wear a bathing suit at the beach with my kids or at the pool, staying covered up, being a victim in my own body, didn't want my kids to have to go through, oh, your mom is deformed or she's burnt, I was struggling with how to fit into life. Like, who am I? Like, what am I? Like, and then being with a man, that is so good looking and, was a great guy. Like, I felt like I had to be like this certain person for him. He really loved when I had the blonde hair and then I had to have the blonde hair. I'm a natural blonde, actually.
But he wanted the trophy wife, the bubble gum.
He liked, that type of, so I just was really trying to be somebody, trying to figure out who I needed to be and who I was all in, and it was chaos. I mean, most people didn't realize it, but like I was screaming inside, like I was just drowning and trying to figure out who I was. Like I had no clue. Every day I got up, I felt empty. It was my own, like I just didn't want to disrupt what we had, like I thought like, no, you're okay. Just do this life. Like this is where you are. This is what you're doing. You're a mom, you're a wife, you're this. Like I was just trying to live that normal life. And I knew deep down inside I wasn't normal.
Right. So you end up divorcing this guy and then you start working in the nightlife industry.
I just started just partying. Drugs they really get you inside your head. You really start to feel certain things. And that's when I started doing it. And it just became a downward spiral. I mean, it was to a point where I started doing meth. I started smoking meth and then it became an addiction. And then it was like the sex that came with it. And then it was, just the thrill and staying up and being able to do all these things. It just became a thrill. Like it was just a chase.
So describe your friendship circle at that time. I assume they were all doing meth, smoking meth.
Not everybody, no, they weren't. Like I had a certain selective few that I did this with, and everyone else just kind of stuck to, the cocaine and drinking and whatever. But there was only a few of us that went to the meth side of it.
Right. And you mentioned, did child services take your daughter from you?
No, they didn't. My brother had taken my kids for a while, so he had. I wouldn't even say legal custody. They were just staying with him.
Because you were on a sick one.
I was literally on my way to death. Like, that's where I wanted to go. Like, I didn't have a care in the world anymore. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to have all these thoughts of, waking up. Like, people don't understand, like, because I never talked about it. So, like, I have to go through him burning to death next to me in that vehicle. Like, that's something I saw with my own eyes. I heard I heard it all, and I have to wake up every day with that vision and that memory. And not only that, I had to wake up every day looking at those scars, and be reminded of that accident every single day. So people just don't understand, what I had to deal with. So when you start doing drugs like that, it does erase it. It takes you into a whole, when you can get on a whole nother kick somewhere else and not be reminded of everything else that you had gone through. That's why people do drugs. It takes away all of that pain.
It numbs it for that moment, doesn't it? Yeah. But the problem is you have to keep going.
Right.
And you kept going so much so that you ended up in a trap house, right?
I ended up in a house that was like a crack house. Yes, I did. It was terrible. That was my rock bottom, but the ultimate rock bottom was me face down on Topanga Canyon with a boot in my back and a gun drawn to the back of my head. And I felt exhausted. Like that was the thing that went through my head was one that I was just so tired of fighting my own mental thoughts. But my body was tired. And then I just had this moment that, like, all of a sudden I was like, I didn't survive a double car explosion and go through everything that I went through to become a drug addict. Like, I just had that moment.
Yeah, this is what Mohawk Matt had to say about the exhaustion with drug use.
I paroled from prison with a pretty extensive habit between heroin and meth because and then I had PTSD from prison coming out. The world was way different after 19 years. So I'm in this room and it's been a couple years off. I'm on parole still and I've had a couple violations for being dirty test. And my last day, I can never forget. I must have done 17 shots of meth.
Oh my God.
And I have one big vein I can always go to, but nothing's working at this point. I've got holes and blood dripping down all my arms, and I'm just exhausted. But mind you, I've been praying for 3 days. I believe in Jesus and Odin at the same time, and I've been praying to both of them, make it stop. Please, I can't handle this. I'm exhausted. I'm just like what I was sharing with you. I was at the place where I'm tired, I'm broken, I'm beaten down. And I didn't realize that my prayers had already been answered. They're making sure that no matter how many shots I do, it's not working. I was just covered in blood, and I opened the door and just begged my mom to help me. You have to be at a place where you are physically and mentally broken to get sober. Nothing I can say to you, nothing your mom, your kid, there's nothing that can change it. You have to want it on your own.
Is that something you could relate to?
It was exactly how I felt. Like, I felt like I couldn't get up from that concrete. Like, there was no way I was gonna be, like, even if that boot and gun wasn't drawn to my head, I was not physically able to lift myself off that concrete. Like, I knew right then and there that I was done. I just didn't have it in me anymore.
So how'd you kick the meth?
I went back to this house and I called my kids and I called my best friend and I told them, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I asked my best friend if I could borrow some money. And I told him that I would pay him back. It was like $150. And I said, I'll pay you back. And he said, I don't want you to pay me back. He goes, I want you to make something of your life. And I said, okay. He knew my struggles. He knew why I was in this downward spiral, and he just said, that's all I ask, is that you make something of your life.
And you did.
And I did.
And that's when it gets to the good part of this hero's journey you've been on. You started to get deeply involved with tattoo work.
Yeah.
You've used these tattoos to cover these scars of the past and place some really beautiful art on your skin.
It is now my life. It's become my soul's purpose. Like this, I don't think I survived that accident to just be another just normal person in the world. I think that all these things have happened to me because I was meant to help other people. I think what my soul's purpose is in this journey is to really help people understand that tattoos are now, it's a form of therapy. It changed my whole life. I watched every burn disappear within seconds. You know, within 3 months' time, it stayed covered up for 17 something years. I had friends that didn't even know I was a burn victim because I was that covered up, to wearing tank tops and people not even knowing I was a burn victim. The amount of therapy that that provided for me and changed my views in life and really helped me find who I was, that person that I was trying to find through all of my marriage and where did I fit in and all of those things, that person was born that day. I knew. I dyed my hair black. I went through all these series of events and started getting more tattoos and started writing my book, which was called Burned Beautiful. And then I was featured in a tattooed magazine with my story. And then I created my first tattoo reality show called Ink Therapy with Charlie Hyde. You know, this was all about how tattoos are not just art anymore, it's therapy.
You also are starting a new reality show called Modified by Ink. And that will cover people such as yourself that have been through some traumatic scarring events or massive extreme weight loss, and using tattoos to cover up those scars and add beauty to their own aesthetic, right?
Right.
Hollywood's a crazy place, right? And there's a lot of sidewinders and guys trying to bamboozle everybody in this town. And you mentioned that an ex-partner used your story to raise a lot of money and basically fuck that all off on his own personal lavish lifestyle, right?
It was pretty hard for me. I mean, I almost gave up on all of this. And then I had met somebody that I had had a conversation with, and he basically told me that I may not have had a hand in the cards that I've been dealt, but I had an obligation to play the hell out of the ones that I had. And that conversation goes deeper, but that made me realize that I shouldn't give up. And I recreated reality show number 2, and I went forth with it. I was terrified, you know, but I did have, you know, a very firm conversation with the guys that I am now involved with. And I said, look, you know, this is an amazing thing, and this could be something very huge and very, you know, beneficial to so many people, but I'm not going to be the easiest person in this process. It may, you know, trigger some PTSD, or, you know, I haven't exactly had the greatest life. But they said that they're willing to stick by my side and make sure that I'm comfortable and that I trust them in every step of this. So I feel confident that I have a great team behind me this time.
Tell us about Angels and Ink. What's the concept behind that?
Angels and Ink is a tattooed women's group that I've created that raises money for veterans. I come from a military family. My grandpa actually, my mom was adopted, so her adopted parents, he built all the inside cockpits of the fighter jets from the 1940s to the 1970s. One of his planes sits on the Midway. He's in the Dayton Air Force Museum in Ohio. So military is a very big, you know, my grandpa was in the war, so it's a very big thing for me. So Angels and Ink, we raise money for veterans, as well as my girls will represent the brands that I put out there. I have 4 brands launching, and each brand will give money back to a nonprofit charity or foundation.
Yeah, and you've put some really beautiful models together, these tattoo dolls that are just beautiful. And in terms of tattooing, are you getting any more work done? I
am in the process of finishing my body. It's been a minute, so I've really taken this last year and figured out what direction I want to take with it. But yeah, this next year will probably be my last year in the tattoo chair.
Brandie, can our audience reach out to you if there's a young woman or man that's listening? Could they reach out to you for some mentorship, some guidance? Do you interact with a lot of your audience? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
how could we reach you, Brandie?
You can DM me on Angels and Ink, my Instagram page. That's my main page for now. Everything else is in the process. Everything will be in one spot eventually, probably after the first of the year, but Angels and Ink.
And I know you have a huge portfolio of tattoo vixens, but if you're a woman that's tattooed and wants to be part of that movement, is there room for more, or are you at capacity right now?
No, absolutely. I've decided to open up Angels and Ink worldwide. I want to be able to reach all different types of women around the world that want to be a part of, not only growing their career, but being a part of representing my brands and everything else. So yes,
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Brandie, thank you so much for coming through. You're a survivor, and I know you're going to help a lot of people in this world.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.